Isn't entry automatic once you've got that marriage certificate? No, it isn't. Far from it. I'm only up to step 1 of my application process and I've already been totally confused, had to pay a lot of money and almost got scammed. Hi, I'm Justine, the nerdy half. And I'm not in the UK. Today I am in New Zealand, still waiting for my visa to process. Yeah, it's a tough life, you know, dealing with the beach. But while having multiple summers and getting to spend Christmas with my family has been the plus side, I would have loved to have been with my husband too. So if you haven't guessed already, I'm a Kiwi, a New Zealander, and I'm married to a Brit. As a Commonwealth citizen, I used to be able to easily pop in and out of the UK. It's not so easy anymore. Even for visa-free travellers like myself from New Zealand, you still only get 180 days on the ETA. The UK has no digital nomad visa, despite the hype. They do have a skilled worker visa. I don't have the right skills. They have a youth mobility scheme. I'm no longer youth. The spousal visa is really the only right fit for me if I want to live full-time with my husband, which I do. Kind of why I married him. And I should note at this point, I'm calling it spousal. It is now called a partner visa, and you're looking for the join your family bit on the website. And most importantly, you need to know a spousal visa is not indefinite. To get something more permanent, you have to go through 3 different stages of spousal visa. If you're successful for the first application of a spousal visa, you'll get up to 33 months. That's 2 years and 9 months. Unless you're applying from within the UK, in which case it's only 30 months. The catch here is you can only actually apply from within the UK if you already have a visa that will allow you to stay longer than 6 months. Now, if you're in this partnership for the long haul, then 33 months is obviously not long enough. After that period, you need to apply again, and this time you'll get an additional 30 months. Then, once you've been in the UK for 5 years continuously, you can start applying for something a little bit more permanent. But I'm not even through the application process for the first spousal visa, so I best not get ahead of myself. But if I am successful in my spousal visa application, it means I can live with Daryl full time for that 33 months. I can still return to New Zealand whenever I want to, instead of when I have to. Plus it allows me to earn while I'm there, and I can access the healthcare. But it's not an easy visa to apply for. Let me talk you through it. The spousal visa is one of those visas that has been reviewed and went through a few changes in 2025. Right now, I'm in the middle of the maze of confusing information, multiple requirements, and changing processes. That is the UK spousal visa application. I'm right in that transition from the paperwork to the digital mode. So I'm going to take you through step by step, detail by detail, because what you read on the website isn't how it goes in reality. Step number 1, prepare. You are going to need a lot of information. The spousal visa application process is a marathon, and the first checkpoint is just understanding the website. Now, I've only made it to the application submission stage, and I've already found that there are a few gaps, discrepancies. Maybe it's just outdated on the website as to what actually happens in reality. But that doesn't mean you need to ignore the website. You really need to read it back and forth. And I mean back and forth, in and out. It's a spider web. It like jumps everywhere. They've tried to make it as comprehensive as possible and as user-friendly as possible, but there are just so many different little tweaks and nuances that it does take a while to get through all the info. It's kind of just not a one-size-fits-all. There are slightly different requirements depending on who you are and where you're from and what your situation is. But the basics are there's a financial threshold, there's a requirement that you have to actually have lived together for a while or can prove that your relationship is solid and that it has been for the past 2 years. You also need to prove that you have adequate living arrangements. There's an English language requirement, and for some countries you also need to show that you've not got tuberculosis. And when I say prove, I mean you've got to eventually give them all this documentation. I say eventually, because this is the part where it starts to get a bit confusing. On the website, it tells you all the examples of how you can prove each of these requirements. But at the next stage, when I did the application form, I got a different list. I'll come to that a little bit further down in the story, but for now you need to know that you should prepare as much documentation as you can, and by prepare I mean have it in digital form. Once you start reading through this, it can seem quite overwhelming, and there are some suggestions that you might need a lawyer or an agent. This might help you, but it is costly, and in a minute I'm going to let you know what my costs have been so far. So please understand you can also DIY it. Having said that though, we have chosen the DIY route, and it hasn't been so easy to get answers to specific questions. Most of the FAQs are kind of generic. There are avenues where you can ask a specific question, but this is going to cost you extra too. Yes, that's the first thing you should know. Every single bit of this is going to cost. So once you've got a handle on all the requirements and all the proof you might need to provide, the next step is to actually fill in the form. Now this is a bit of a long and complicated form, and there might be additional bits of information that they haven't mentioned before that you need to add now. For example, I had to give a list of every country that I'd been to in the last 10 years. I'm a travel vlogger. It was a long list. Now technically it's only the applicant that fills it in, but there's going to be a lot of information around your spouse's situation or partner's situation that you'll need to fill in too. So it would be handy to have them nearby online while you're doing it. But it's the type of form that you can pop in and out of. You don't have to do it all in one sitting, thank goodness. One thing I didn't have to do, being a Kiwi, is the English language test or the TB test. But again, if you're from various countries, you'll have various rules, so you need to check onto that on the website. Now, once you've filled in the form, you're going to have to pay. And we better sit down for this. It's costly. Again, slightly different fees depending on your situation, but for me, I was charged £1,938 for the application and a health surcharge of £3,105. So altogether that came to just over 12,000 New Zealand dollars. Ouch. And this all has to be paid in advance when you submit your application. There are some avenues to apply for financial support. I don't know what the requirements are for those. Once you've recovered from that, it's time to think about biometrics and actually submitting those documents. This is where things started to get a bit confusing for me. You see, it's at this point that you shift from gov.uk to your partner site. And the partners are going to be different country to country. The partners are the people in each country who are responsible for collecting your documents and your biometrics. So I had an appointment to set up with the partners in New Zealand, and we have only 3 partner sites in the country, Auckland, Christchurch or Wellington. So that was an added cost for me. I had to actually travel to Auckland in order to be able to do it. First you have to make an appointment, and that was pretty easy for me actually. There were lots of available slots. Again, it'll be different depending on where you are in the world. And they ask that before you go, you already upload your documents. And this is where I was a little bit confused, because they said print off this list of required documents, which I did, and make sure you have submitted all of those before you go, which I did. But the list only contained 5 or 6 different documents, not all the ones that I was expecting from the website. They haven't yet asked for proof of income or accommodation, so I'm not sure what stage that comes at. I do have those docs, but when I went back in after my biometrics to upload them, I no longer had access to the portal. So hopefully when they said only these required documents, that's actually what they meant. Uploading them, again, isn't as simple as it seems. They have to be a particular format and size. If you're having any worries about doing this, they will do it for you. Again, it will cost you. I think it was around about 70 New Zealand dollars if you wanted to take that option. There was another additional service that you could pay for. For another additional cost, I could have requested my passport to be returned to me via courier. I'm really glad I didn't do that, and I'll explain why in a minute. The biometrics appointment itself is pretty easy. It's fingerprints and scanning your face for a photograph. And then they ask for you to submit your passport, which I happily did. It was all making sense to me so far. They need my passport so they can put the stamp in it. They need it for the processing time, so I'll get it back, I'll come and pick it up again when they're done. But what actually happened was, she took my passport and she scanned it into the computer. Then she took a courier bag out of her desk and she put my passport in the courier bag. Then she printed off an address label and a courier barcode and stuck that on the bag. And then she gave me the courier bag and asked me to take it to the receptionist. The receptionist then sealed the courier bag, scanned the barcode, printed off a receipt. She then gave me the receipt and asked me to sign that I had received my passport and handed me back my passport in the courier bag. Yes, this is the one I had just given her 30 seconds prior. I looked at her confused and she said, yeah, it's now actually an eVisa. We don't need your passport, but we're not allowed to hand them back physically. So I'm guessing this is one of the transition points in the process where the manual about how to do it is still around the paper form and not around the digital form. Anyway, I now have my application in, I have my biometrics done, and I still have my passport in hand. So maybe I can go back to the UK while I wait for the whole thing to process? I mean, I've got a valid ETA. No, technically yes, but no. That is another thing that is likely to get you flagged as visitor abuse. The point of an ETA is a tourist or a visitor. It's not so you can go and hang around while you wait for another visa application to be processed. So how long will this process take? Well, on the website it says 12 weeks. Our advisor said 6 weeks. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere in the middle. Now it does say there is an option on the website to pay to get it fast-tracked. That's an additional £1,000. However, that does not apply to the spousal visa. The website just doesn't make that clear. And here's another thing that is not entirely clear and is something you really need to be aware of. Because you're dipping in and out of gov.uk and your partner site, you are now open to scams and phishing. After my biometrics appointment, I got another email saying that I had 5 days to complete my application. It's already complete, I thought. Maybe they mean now they want the rest of those documents. So I clicked the link, but it didn't seem to go to the place where I thought it should go. So I quickly went out again. Then Daryl and I did a bit of digging, and yes, that was a phishing email. Even though the partners are called FCDO services or Foreign Commonwealth Development Office services, you do not want to get an email from FCDOS. The email I received had my full name and my application number, but it was from noreply@fcdos.gov.uk. That is not a legitimate email. You want only gov.uk. You shouldn't ever get an email from gov.uk that has some kind of 5-day urgency around it. That's another red flag. Now I should know by better because I've fallen for this before. I have made a whole other video about scams that you need to look out for when you're a traveller. So once again I had to clean my computer of malware. So my advice is make sure you double check every single email you get and run it through some kind of scam checker before you reply or click anything. So that's the stage I'm up to right now. I'm just waiting in this beautiful space for some kind of response. You see, you can't actually track your application in any proactive way. It's totally a don't call us, we'll call you situation. Again, if you want to pay fees, the UKVI do have a paid service that you can email to. And initially I thought that my UKVI account would give me an update on my status. No, that doesn't take effect until after you've been approved. The next steps involve downloading apps and getting share codes and all sorts of stuff. Hopefully though, I'll be able to share that with you very, very soon. I am really looking forward to making you another video about the rest of the process as soon as I can. In the meantime, if anyone's been through it recently, let us know in the comments. Or if you have any questions or a specific issue you want me to look into, again, let me know in the comment. I'm happy to do the research for you. And of course, don't forget my weekly Sunday morning travel briefings. Yep, every week I'll bring you travel news from across the world. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe and the notifications bell. I really hope to see you for the next episode. Until then, happy travels everyone.